They didn't even look up when they took everything from me. No node, no thank you, no memory of the decades I spent bleeding for them in silence. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft clicking of laptops as the future arrived, young, overconfident, and already replacing me before I'd even stood up. My name is Daniel Crane. I'm 52 years old, and until exactly 11:06 this morning, I was the Executive Vice President of Strategy at Halverson and Bright, an enterprise tech firm I helped grow from 6 people in a shared office above a bike shop to a multinational powerhouse. I was never the loudest in the room, but when something needed fixing, when a decision meant millions, when the storm hit and people needed a steady hand, I was the one they called. For 23 years, I showed up early, left late, and never once played the game of self-promotion. I thought loyalty still meant something. I sat at the boardroom table, leather folder in front of me, as Derek, the CEO, a man I once mentored straight out of MIT, cleared his throat. I could feel it coming. The shift in air pressure, the way people stop blinking when they know something uncomfortable is about to happen. "Dan," Derek said, his voice almost clinical, "we're moving in a new direction." I stayed silent. You learn, after a couple decades in leadership, that silence has more power than panic. He adjusted his cufflink, a nervous tick he picked up years ago. "We need to be more agile, more dynamic. The market's shifting faster than ever, and, well, we feel that your skill set isn't aligned with where we're going. You've been a pillar here, but you're not adaptable to rapid change." There it was. A 24-year-old, he went on to explain, would be stepping into my role. A viral marketing savant, as he put it. Fresh out of Stanford with 1 million followers and a TED Talk. Apparently, that's what strategy looks like now. I looked around the table. Carol, who I'd coached through her first acquisition. Miguel, who called me in tears when his mother passed and I covered his entire department for 2 months. Jessica, whose first promotion I'd fought for when others said she was too green. Not one of them met my eyes. "Thank you," I said quietly, standing. I adjusted my blazer and tucked the folder under my arm. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said a word. I walked out of that boardroom the same way I'd entered this company, alone, silent, and with my dignity intact. The walk down the hall was longer than I remembered. It felt like the walls had shifted, like the place itself had exhaled and decided I no longer belonged. I passed by the glass offices I'd helped design. Open layout, ergonomic chairs, daylight optimization. I used to believe that investing in people meant they'd invest back. My office was already packed into boxes. Of course it was. An HR assistant I didn't recognize gave me a tight smile, handed me a checklist, and returned to scrolling her phone. I didn't need a checklist. I needed 10 minutes. 10 minutes to say goodbye to the only career I'd ever known. 10 minutes to mourn. I picked up a framed photo of the founding team, 5 of us standing in front of a whiteboard in 2002. The company name misspelled behind us in dry erase marker. We looked like idiots, brave, hopeful idiots. As I put the photo into a box, the door opened. He walked in, the visionary. He wore white sneakers, a bomber jacket, and a smugness he hadn't earned. He glanced at me like I was maintenance. "Sorry. Oh, you're still here," he said, already halfway in. "Still here." I nodded once. "Just finishing up." Cool, he muttered, already pulling out his phone and walking to the desk that was still mine. He didn't ask my name. He didn't shake my hand. He sat in my chair, and started typing. I closed the last box, lifted it, and turned to leave. At the doorway, I paused. I thought about saying something, maybe offering a piece of advice, maybe warning him that going viral isn't the same as leading. But I didn't. I walked out without looking back. As the elevator doors closed, I saw my reflection in the brushed steel. Same suit, same man. Just no longer part of the future. I stepped out onto the sidewalk into the June sun and exhaled. No job, no title, no send-off. But I still had one thing they couldn't take. My honor. For the record, I let them think I was done. I let them imagine I'd drift off quietly, maybe buy a boat, spend my days yelling at squirrels and listening to old jazz records. That's the story they like to tell themselves about men like me. Burnt out, outdated, done. Truth was, I didn't know who the hell I was without that title. The first week, I barely left the house. The silence was strange. No back-to-back meetings, no late-night pings, no metrics to chase or forecasts to shape. Just me, a leather couch that squeaked when I shifted, and the echo of 23 years unraveling. I started journaling, not because I wanted to, but because I needed a place to unload the anger that kept rising in waves. I wrote in all caps the first few days. Then I stopped writing altogether and just stared at the paper, unsure whether I was grieving the job, the betrayal, or the version of me that only existed inside that office. I didn't tell anyone, not yet, not my sister, not the handful of friends I'd kept over the years. I couldn't stomach the pity in their voices or the "you're better off" speeches. I wasn't better off. I was a ghost pacing my own house, wearing the same suit pants and undershirt, like I still had somewhere to be. The turn came on a Wednesday. I was halfway through a lukewarm beer at 2 in the afternoon when I got a text from Walter Klein. Walter had founded Halverson and Bright back when venture capital was still called bank loans. He hired me as his strategist when I was 29, barely older than the kid who took my place. He retired 5 years ago, right before the company went public, and had vanished into the woods of Vermont with a cabin and a German shepherd. His message just said, "Come see me. You need air." I booked a flight that night. His cabin was a 2-hour drive from the airport and looked exactly like you'd expect. A fire pit, chopped wood stacked like Jenga blocks, and Walter in a flannel shirt that hadn't seen a washing machine in weeks. He hugged me without saying a word, then handed me a glass of bourbon that burned on the way down. "I heard," he said finally, sitting on the porch. I nodded. There wasn't much else to say. "They replaced a compass with a weather vane," he muttered, watching the treetops sway. "You told them which way to go. Now they've got some kid spinning in circles based on whatever's trending that day." That line stuck with me. A compass versus a weather vane. "You did good work, Dan," he added. "They just stopped knowing how to see it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easily they had moved on, how they hadn't even asked me to hand off my projects. No transition memo, no questions, just gone. So I started digging. I didn't use my name. I didn't want anyone knowing I was paying attention. At first it was curiosity. Then it became something else. The company's social media channels were exploding with energy. Contests, brand stunts, flashy slogans that said absolutely nothing. Every other day they were announcing a new initiative. None of it made sense strategically. I knew the quarterly cycles by heart. These weren't moves made for long-term growth. They were scrambling for attention. Then I saw it. A feature rollout I'd been designing for nearly 2 years. A massive cross-departmental integration between legacy clients and a new AI tool we'd prototyped in-house. It was delicate work. We'd spent months stress testing it for compliance issues and market positioning. Now, it was being touted as the brainchild of their new Chief Transformation Officer. He stood in front of a step-and-repeat banner at some tech event, beaming like he'd personally invented the concept of innovation. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. I wasn't surprised he took the credit. What shook me was how easily the company let him. The next day I got an anonymous email through Proton Mail. No name, no sign-off. Just a subject line. "You should know what they're hiding." Inside was a list of irregularities, missed filings, scrubbed reports, and a trail of delayed internal audits. Whoever sent it had access to internal servers. They'd highlighted 3 departments, including the division responsible for compliance oversight. I recognized one of the file structures. I'd built it. They were hiding something, maybe even criminal negligence. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the chaos on screen. That's when I noticed it, patterns emerging. Things no one else would see unless they'd lived inside the machine as long as I had. I stood, walked to the whiteboard in my study, and picked up a black marker. I started sketching the structure, departments, decision makers, financial nodes. Then I marked vulnerabilities, pressure points, names I knew could still be trusted. It didn't take long before the board looked less like a company and more like a battlefield. They thought I was finished, but I wasn't done. I was just getting quiet and strategic. I didn't need to announce a comeback. I just needed to move like smoke. 3 weeks after that email from the compliance ghost, I filed an LLC under the name Northway Solutions. Just a quiet little consultancy on paper. No photo, no bio, just a mission statement that could have applied to a yoga studio or a financial firm. Clarity, direction, integrity. I used a pseudonym, David Norris, common enough to disappear into the noise. And then I started making calls. Not to the clients who were still plastered across our website. No, I called the ones who drifted away in the last 6 months. The legacy partners who'd been loyal for decades, before the company went public, before the board, before the kid with the sneaker collection and buzzwords. The first conversation was awkward. I'd worked with Henry McLennan, a senior VP at Oralinx, for over a decade. He was polite when I introduced myself under the alias, but I could feel the skepticism. So I didn't sell. I listened. He told me about the mess that followed my exit. Disjointed strategy rollouts, vanity metrics, brand campaigns with no back-end integration. Their analytics platform had gone down 3 times in a single month, costing them over $1.5 million in client churn, all dressed up to look like beta testing. When I said, "I know how they built that system. I helped write the original design," the line went quiet. 5 seconds later, he said, "You're Daniel." I didn't confirm, didn't need to. "Let's fix this," he said, quietly. Word spread faster than I expected, not in press releases or LinkedIn endorsements, but in whispered phone calls and blind CC emails. People wanted to talk. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed they hadn't spoken up. Most just wanted someone to give a damn again. I helped a half-dozen clients stabilize their operations within 2 months. Some needed rebuilds. Others needed someone to walk them through how to stand their ground when the new regime tried to upsell them half-finished features. Then came the calls from inside. Mid-level managers, compliance officers, one sharp young engineer from DevOps who said, "I don't know what's going on anymore, but it's not what we signed up for." They weren't whistleblowers. They were survivors. Smart people caught in a storm, unsure if speaking up would cost them their careers. I built a map. Contacts in compliance flagged, repeated adjustments to engagement data. Social team leads reported pressure to optimize optics, which apparently meant inflating viewer metrics with bot traffic. Internal emails showed the CEO and the new golden boy, Julian, that was his name, coordinating posts, triggering phony engagement spikes, and laundering the results through a third-party analytics firm. It wasn't fraud yet, but it was the kind of dishonest that grows legs. I brought in old friends, not a team, an alliance. Sheila from Risk, who'd been pushed into early retirement. Brenner from Data, who used to vet our forecasting models. 2 ex-competitors from a rival firm we'd once outplayed. Guys who respected the way I worked, even when we were fighting for the same contracts. We created a quiet pipeline. One by one, we helped clients stabilize. One by one, we documented the cracks. The money didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet revenge of watching stability replace chaos, of watching clients remember what it was like to trust leadership again. Then one morning, I opened a forwarded deck from an old friend on the investor side. It was Julian's Q2 investor pitch. Bright colors, buzz phrases, bloated charts showing historical highs in user engagement. I dug into the numbers. None of it tracked. Revenue down 12%. Churn rate up 16%. But according to Julian's slides, everything was on fire in a good way. It was all facade, all of it. That afternoon, I made one phone call. No name, just the number I'd kept in a file marked break only when necessary. The board chair picked up on the 3rd ring. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly a year. "Claudia," I said, "it's Dan." Silence. "I won't keep you. I just wanted to suggest you attend the next quarterly review in person. And maybe bring someone from outside finance. I think you'll find the numbers enlightening." Another pause, then a quiet, measured response. "Understood." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't trying to take anyone's head. This wasn't a war, not in the traditional sense. This was course correction. One calculated move at a time, the way it should have been all along. The conference room hadn't changed. Same polished wood table, same cold brew on tap. Same floor-to-ceiling windows with that arrogant skyline view. But everything felt different. The air was tighter. People were sitting straighter. No one scrolled on their phones. And I was back, though not in the way anyone expected. I wore a gray suit, no tie, clean shave. Looked like any other consultant, which is exactly how I wanted it. My name wasn't on the schedule. The invite came from the external audit firm Halverson and Bright had hired after board pressure mounted. I'd helped select them, quietly, 3 weeks prior. Across the room, Derek paced like a man preparing for theater. His sleeves were rolled, tie loose, voice practiced. Julian sat next to him, flipping through the presentation with his usual caffeinated bounce. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but still had the gall to wink at one of the investors. The board chair, Claudia Reyes, sat at the center, cold, precise, eyes on fire behind her glasses. At exactly 10 a.m., Derek stood. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, Halverson & Bright has undergone a dynamic transformation over the past quarter. I'm proud to say we've emerged more agile, more data-driven, and more connected to our market than ever before." He clicked the remote. The screen lit up with animations, charts exploding upward, colors pulsing like a music video. Julian took over. "As you can see, engagement is up 212%. Influencer partnerships have tripled, and we've reached a projected brand impact index of—" "What the hell is a brand impact index?" one of the board members asked. Julian blinked. "It's a composite metric that reflects emotional reach and social virality." I watched the first crack form right there. Claudia let the slide hang a little too long. Derek jumped in. "It's a directional metric, not a GAAP figure, obviously, but it shows positive momentum." They rushed into the next section: client growth, culture surveys, buzz sentiment, trends. But the financials, those were suspiciously shallow. No breakdowns, no departmental performance, no year-over-year comparisons. Just big numbers and brighter colors. Claudia raised her hand. "Derek, we'll need to see the full, unadjusted financials before we move forward with this agenda." Derek's smile tightened. "Of course. Julian, can you pull those up?" Julian fumbled at his laptop. "Sure, just give me a second." "Actually," Claudia said, "we've already pulled them." The lights dimmed. A different presentation replaced the flash and gloss. Audit firm branding in the corner, my deck, clean, minimal, bullet points in black and white. The silence was immediate. Claudia began reading aloud. Quarterly revenue declined by 12.4%. Customer churn rose to 16.8%. Social engagement figures were inflated by bot traffic from 2 contracted overseas click farms. And internal reporting metrics were scrubbed of anomaly flags. Julian froze. Derek cleared his throat. "We weren't made aware of any such—" Claudia cut him off. "We were provided internal emails showing that you were not only aware, but actively coordinating public narratives that contradicted known data." Screenshots appeared, emails, Slacks, internal documents flagged by anonymous whistleblowers. Even the vanity campaign that backfired, costing a client millions, was traced to Julian's team, bypassing compliance approval. I watched as Derek's face drained of color. "I was told those reports were resolved," he muttered. "By whom?" Claudia asked. He looked at Julian. Julian swallowed. I thought those anomalies were just back-end errors. I didn't realize—" "You signed off on every campaign," Claudia said, "and you publicly took credit for a long-term systems integration project that was already in motion before your hiring. That's documented too." That was the final crack. Julian folded like wet paper. "I didn't mean to misrepresent. Derek said it was fine. He said it was all part of the positioning." Derek stood up fast. "We can't hang this on him. This isn't about one campaign or a few inflated metrics. We were making a cultural pivot. We had to move quickly." "And you lost control," Claudia said flatly. She turned her head toward me. "Daniel," she said, "can you walk us through the stabilization plan?" Every pair of eyes turned to me. Even Julian, still trembling, couldn't look away. I stood, no fanfare, no vindication speech, just a steady exhale. I clicked the remote. "Three-phase stabilization," I said. "First, restore client trust through direct outreach and measurable deliverables. No marketing fluff, just delivery. Second, rebuild the internal compliance framework you quietly dismantled using the original architecture developed in 2022. Third, replace all directional vanity metrics with standardized performance indicators. Client retention, audited revenue, platform uptime, real numbers. I kept it tight, clean, just the facts." Claudia nodded once. "Thank you, Daniel." I sat back down, didn't gloat, didn't smirk. Because I wasn't here to be right, I was here to lead. My name was back on the directory, just smaller this time. Interim Executive Advisor, it said beneath the company logo on the freshly printed badge they gave me. No office, no title politics, no strategic pissing matches. Just a small war room, a temporary desk, and 3 months to stabilize what had been nearly wrecked. I wasn't there to save face or reclaim territory. I was there to rebuild what mattered: trust. The first week, I met with every major client who hadn't already walked. I didn't send a PR team or a presentation deck. I flew out, sat across from them, listened. I told them the truth. We'd gone off course. The compass was back. And we were here to earn them, not beg them. Some shook my hand, some needed time. One of them, an old manufacturing client in Ohio, actually teared up. "You're the only one who ever understood our business," he said. "Not just our brand, our business." Internally, I brought back the risk team Julian had gutted and gave them a mandate: full restoration of compliance structures, zero shortcuts. I reinstated mandatory review cycles, no directional metrics, no slide decks full of fireworks and fluff, just raw, uncomfortable truth. It was exhausting, and it was worth every minute. By the 6th week, churn had leveled. 3 lost accounts returned. One of them sent a handwritten letter. But the job was never meant to last. Claudia offered me the full-time position during a quiet lunch. "You've done more in 8 weeks than the last 2 teams did in a year," she said. I stirred my coffee. "I appreciate that, but I'm done being inside the machine." She didn't push. She knew. The industry had changed. The noise had gotten louder, faster, flashier. But I'd gotten older too, wiser. I didn't want a corner office again. I wanted my life back. Before I left for good, I made one last stop. Julian had been demoted, not fired. He'd been assigned to a cross-functional training program, corporate purgatory basically. He was in a shared space now, sitting behind a modest monitor, no jacket, sleeves rolled up, staring at a spreadsheet he clearly didn't understand. I tapped twice on his desk. He looked up, startled. "Oh," he said. "Hey, didn't expect..." He stood awkwardly, unsure if I was there to humiliate him or fire him. I wasn't there for either. "You've got a shot to do something meaningful," I said. "But you need to stop chasing applause. Noise fades, wisdom sticks." He blinked. "You're smart, Julian," I added. "But smarts without depth just makes you loud. Read more, listen more, talk less." He nodded, not defensively, not defeated, just thoughtful. I turned and left. No handshake, no sermon, just the echo of the advice I wish someone had given me when I was his age. The following Friday, I boxed up my temporary desk. No one gave a speech. That was fine. I didn't need one. I drove home with the windows down. The sky was the kind of late summer blue that makes you forgive the rest of the year. At the next red light, I caught myself humming, something old and stupid from a radio jingle. But I didn't care. When I got home, I walked straight to the study. The whiteboard was still there, covered in arrows and risk lines and system rebuilds. It looked like a war zone. I erased it, every last mark. Then I pulled an old photo out of a folder, the one from our first year. 5 of us standing awkwardly in front of a crooked banner with Halverson in bright, misspelled in block letters. My tie was too wide. My smile was too big. We looked ridiculous. And we looked like we cared. I framed it, set it right where the whiteboard had been. This wasn't about revenge. It never was. It wasn't even about justice. It was about restoration. About reminding people what it looks like to care, to build, to lead without shouting. My legacy was never that glass office on the top floor. It was in the roots, the groundwork, the part no one sees until it's gone. As I stepped back and looked at the photo, I realized I didn't need to be there anymore. They'd remember now. I didn't burn the house down. I just reminded them who built it.